5 years. That's how long it had been since I'd last seen Liam. 5 years since he had methodically and meticulously dismantled my life, leaving me a ghost in the ruins of our shared dreams. In my memory, he existed as a phantom limb in ache where something vital used to be, a constant, dull throb that reminded me of the amputation. Our story began, as many do, in the beautiful, chaotic mess of shared ambition. We were two halves of a single brilliant idea, huddled over laptops, in a cramped, third-floor apartment that always smelled of burnt coffee and ozone from the overworked circuitry. The idea was called Helios. It was a revolutionary bio-integrative solar panel, thin, flexible, almost alive. It didn't just capture sunlight. It breathed it, using a synthetic chlorophyll analog I had spent my postgraduate years developing. I was the science, the quiet, obsessive engine of creation. Liam was the face. He was charming, handsome, with a silver tongue that could sell sand in the Sahara. He could translate my complex equations into a language investors understood, the language of disruptive potential and exponential profit. "We're going to change the world, Alara," he would whisper to me in the dead of night, his arm wrapped around me, the city lights a distant galaxy below our window. You and me, the dreamer and the doer. I believed him. I believed in him with a fierce, blinding loyalty that left no room for doubt. He handled the business plans, the patents, the networking. My world was the lab, a sanctuary of beakers and data points where I was coaxing our dream into reality. I assigned him as the primary patent holder for expediency, a decision made over cheap pizza and cheaper wine, sealed with a trusting kiss. It was a catastrophic mistake, a single stroke of a pen that would later sign away my entire world. The beginning of the end was a man named Alistair Finch. He was a titan of venture capital, a shark in a bespoke suit who could smell $1 billion idea from a mile away. Securing a meeting with him was like getting an audience with the Pope. Liam, through his relentless networking, had managed it. I remember the morning of the presentation, my hands shaking as I handed him the final prototype, a small leaf-like wafer that pulsed with a soft green light. "You've done it, Elle," he said, his eyes shining with an intensity that I mistook for shared pride. "You've actually done it." He kissed me, a quick, almost formal gesture, and walked out the door with our future tucked into his briefcase. He came back that evening a different man. The boyish excitement was gone, replaced by a cool, unnerving confidence. He said the meeting had been a spectacular success. Finch was in. But there were conditions. "They need a more aggressive leader, Alara," he explained, pacing our small living room. "Someone who speaks their language. They see me as that person." He started having meetings I wasn't invited to, taking calls in hushed tones on the balcony. He'd come home late, smelling of expensive cologne and single malt scotch, offering vague excuses about investor dinners. "A beautiful crimson-red scarf appeared in his Cara gift," he said, from Alistair Finch's daughter, Amelia, who was a junior partner at the firm and incredibly impressed with the Helios project. The day he left was quiet. There was no shouting, no dramatic confrontation, just a cold, methodical packing of a suitcase. He sat me down on our lumpy sofa, the same spot where we had sketched out our first designs, and delivered the verdict on my life with the detached air of a CEO announcing quarterly losses. "I'm leaving you, Alara," he said, his voice devoid of the warmth I had known for 6 years. "Amelia and we have a connection, and her father sees my potential." The words were a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs, but the true devastation was yet to come. The Helios project. Finch is funding it. With me as CEO, he continued, refusing to meet my eyes. "The patent is in my name. The intellectual property is mine. I've already formed the company." I stared at him, my mind unable to process the scale of the betrayal. "Our project, Liam?" I whispered, my voice cracking. "I develop science. It's my work." He finally looked at me then, and the look in his eyes was the single cruelest thing I have ever witnessed. It was a pity. "You're a brilliant scientist, Alara, but you're not a visionary. You don't have the killer instinct. You create things in a lab. I build empires. This is business." It's not personal, but it was personal. It was a theft of my heart, my mind, my future, and my identity, all in one fell swoop. He walked out, leaving me in the silent apartment with the ghosts of our shared dreams and a mountain of debt from the research loans I had taken out in my name. 2 weeks later, tech journals announced the launch of Helios Innovations, with Liam Sterling as its charismatic CEO and a massive infusion of capital from Finch Ventures. The accompanying photo showed him smiling, his arm wrapped around the elegant, poised Amelia Finch. He was wearing a new, impeccably tailored suit. He looked like he had been born to wear it. The aftermath was a slow, agonizing descent. The first casualty was my home. I was evicted from our apartment, the weight of the research debt crushing me. I sold what little I had, moving into a tiny, damp room in a shared house on the forgotten side of town. The second casualty was my reputation. When I tried to tell my story to explain that Helios was my creation, I was met with a wall of disbelief and condescending smiles. Liam and Finch had been thorough. They had painted me as a jilted, unstable ex-girlfriend, a lab assistant who had become delusional and was trying to lay claim to her brilliant ex-boyfriend's success. My professional credibility, once my most valuable asset, was systematically dismantled. I was broken. For a full year, I drifted in a fog of grief and humiliation. I took a job washing dishes in a 24-hour diner, the harsh smell of bleach and old grease a constant nauseating reminder of how far I had fallen. My hands, once skilled enough to manipulate molecules, were now raw and chapped from scalding water. I saw Liam's face everywhere on the covers of business magazines. On talk shows, his confident smile, a constant mocking presence. Helios Innovations was a darling of the tech world, lauded for its revolutionary green technology. His technology the turning point came not as a lightning bolt of inspiration, but as a quiet, stubborn flicker of defiance in the dark. It was 3 a.m. at the diner. I was staring into a sink full of murky water, my reflection a pale, haunted stranger. I thought about the core of my research, not the solar panels, but the synthetic chlorophyll itself. The Laravance molecule, as I had secretly called it in my old notebooks. Liam had stolen the application, the product. But he hadn't stolen the foundational science. He couldn't. He didn't understand it. A thought, the first truly clear thought I'd had in a year, cut through the fog. He built his house on my land, but he doesn't own the earth beneath it. That night, I went back to my tiny room and dug out my old, battered notebooks from a cardboard box under my bed. I hadn't been able to bring myself to throw them away. As I read through my own frantic scribbles, my own elegant equations, the ghost of the woman I used to be began to stir. I saw the flaws in the Helios design, the shortcuts Liam must have pushed for to get to market faster. I saw the untapped potential, the next generation possibilities. He would never be able to see the fire was reignited. Not the bright, optimistic flame of my youth, but a slow-burning, intensely focused blue fire of pure, unadulterated purpose. My new lab was the local public library. My equipment was a second-hand laptop and the sheer force of my will. I slept 4 hours a night, spending every spare moment rebuilding my science from the ground up, not to replicate Helios, but to make it obsolete. My new project was codenamed Nyx. While Helios captured light, Nyx would do something far more radical. It would convert ambient radiation radio waves, Wi-Fi signals, the background noise of the universe into usable energy. It was a concept, so far beyond Helios that it bordered on science fiction. It was my magnum opus, born from the ashes of my ruin. I needed a real lab. My diner savings were a pittance. I started tutoring university students in chemistry and physics, my reputation. As a crazy ex, making it impossible to get a formal teaching position. One of my students, a brilliant but struggling engineering undergrad named Ben, saw something in me. He saw the passion beneath the exhaustion. I cautiously told him about my research, and his eyes lit up. My uncle, he said one day, he runs a small, independent electronics workshop. It's mostly for repairs, but he has an oscilloscope, a spectrum analyzer. Old stuff, but it works. He works days. The place is empty at night. Ben's uncle, a gruff but kind man named Marcus, listened to my story. He didn't understand the science, but he understood betrayal. He gave me a key. Just lock up when you're done, he said, and don't burn the place down. That dusty workshop became my sanctuary. For 3 years, I lived a double life. By day, I was a quiet, unassuming tutor. By night, I was a scientist on the edge of a breakthrough, fueled by cheap coffee and a burning desire to reclaim my name. Ben became my first disciple, working alongside me, his youthful optimism a perfect foil to my grim determination. We were joined by a retired software engineer named Maria, one of Marcus's old friends, who was bored with retirement and fascinated by the challenge of writing the code to manage the energy conversion. We were a tiny, motley crew of outcasts, working in secret while Liam's Helios innovations dominated the headlines. We had no funding, no recognition, only the unwavering belief in science. There were countless failures. Moments of despair where the math didn't work, where the prototypes fizzled and died on the workbench. But with every setback, my resolve hardened. I wasn't just building a technology. I was forging a new version of myself, one made not of trusting naivety, but of resilient, unbreakable steel. After 3.5 years of relentless work, we had a working prototype. A small, elegant black tile that, when placed in a room, could power a small LED bulb using nothing but the ambient Wi-Fi signal. It was magic. It was the future. Now, we needed funding. And for that, I had to step out of the shadows. I created a shell company, LV Core, and began cautiously approaching small, ethical venture capital firms, the kind the giants like Finch Ventures would sneer at. The rejections were swift and brutal. I was a nobody with an outlandish idea. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A small, all-female investment group called Athena Capital, known for backing high-risk, high-impact projects led by women. I secured a meeting. I walked in not as the broken woman from the diner, but as Dr. Alara Vance, a scientist with an unshakable belief in her data. I didn't tell them my backstory. I didn't need to. The science spoke for itself. They gave me my seed funding. It wasn't much, but it was enough. We moved out of the workshop and into a small, proper lab. We hired a handful of brilliant young engineers. I renamed the company, shedding the last vestiges of my past. LV Core became Lyra Innovations. Over. The next year, we moved at lightning speed. We refined the next technology, secured our patents, this time with my name, and only my name, on every single one, and prepared for our launch. I stayed out of the public eye, letting our work create the buzz. Whispers began to circulate in the tech world about a stealth company with a technology that could make solar obsolete. Meanwhile, Helios Innovations, for all its market dominance, was beginning to show cracks. Reports of panel degradation and efficiency issues were starting to surface. Liam had rushed the product to market, prioritizing aesthetics and profit over long-term stability. He had stolen the house, but he didn't know how to maintain the foundation. Then the invitation arrived. An embossed, cream-colored cardstock that felt heavy in my hand. It was for the Innovators Zenith Gala, the most prestigious event in the tech calendar. This year, they were honoring a single individual with the Visionary of the Year award. The letter explained that the recipient was the CEO of a revolutionary new company, and that the host would be officially introducing them and their technology to the world at the event. My name was on the guest list. But the letter also contained a private, sealed addendum. It was from the gala's host committee. It informed me that I was the recipient. It was my coming out party, and I knew with absolute certainty that Liam would be there. The night of the gala, I chose my armor carefully. It was not a gown of glittering sequins or bold, look-at-me colors. It was a simple, exquisitely tailored dress of deep midnight. Blue silk that fell in a clean, unbroken line to the floor. It was the color of the night sky, of the quiet, determined work we had done in the shadows. My only jewelry was a pair of small, elegant earrings. I was not there to be a spectacle. I was there to be a statement. Ben and Maria, my loyal team, my found family, flanked me as we walked into the grand ballroom. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the low hum of 100 conversations. It was a sea of familiar faces from my past life, people who had once praised my work and then turned their backs on me, whispering that I was unstable. Tonight, they offered polite, confused smiles, their eyes trying to place the woman who was both a stranger and a ghost. And then I saw him. Liam was holding court near the grand staircase, a glass of champagne in his hand, Amelia clinging to his arm like a designer accessory. He looked exactly the same, yet different. The boyish charm had hardened into a polished, corporate arrogance. He was thicker around the middle, his face flushed with the easy confidence of a man who had never known a day of true struggle. Saw me. His eyes widened for a fraction of a second, a flicker of surprise, before his signature smirk slid into place. He excused himself from his circle of admirers and began to walk towards me, a predator closing in on an unexpected prey. Well, well, he said, his voice dripping with condescending amusement. He let his eyes travel down my simple dress and back up to my face. Elara Vance, I have to admit, I'm surprised to see you here. I didn't realize they catered events like this. Or are you on the staff? Amelia tittered beside him, a sound like breaking glass. Then took a protective step forward, but I placed a calming hand on his arm. I had rehearsed this moment in my mind 1,000 times. I would not let him see me break. Hello, Liam, I said, my voice even and calm. Amelia, you both look. Well, we are, he said, puffing out his chest slightly. Helios just closed a massive deal in Asia. We're expanding. It's funny, isn't it, how things work out? Some people have what it takes, and some just don't. He was speaking to me, but his words were for the small audience that had begun to gather, drawn by the scent of drama. I remember our little apartment project, he continued, a cruel nostalgia in his eyes. You were always so idealistic, so caught up in the purity of the science. You see, Elara, the real world doesn't reward purity. It rewards vision and action. I'm sure it does, I said, my voice still quiet. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper meant to be overheard. Listen, I know things have been tough. If you need some money, for old time's sake, I could help you out. I'm feeling generous tonight. It was the ultimate humiliation. An offer of charity from the man who had stolen my life's work, delivered as a public spectacle of his magnanimity. The anger, white-hot and pure, surged through me, but I held it back. I just looked at him, a small, enigmatic smile playing on my lips. My silence seemed to unnerve him more than any outburst would have. Before he could continue his performance, the lights in the ballroom dimmed and a spotlight hit the main stage. A hush fell over the crowd. The host, a famous tech journalist named Julianne Moore, stepped up to the podium. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Innovators Zenith Gala. She began, her voice crisp and authoritative. Once a year, we gather to celebrate the spirit of innovation, but this year is different. This year, we are not just celebrating an innovation. We are witnessing a paradigm shift. We are here to honor a visionary whose work will not just disrupt the market, but redefine our entire relationship with energy. I could see Liam prating from the corner of my eye, straightening his tie, a smug smile on his face. He thought she was talking about him. He believed he was the main character in every story. Julian continued, for years we have looked to the sun, but this visionary looked to the space between us, to the very air we breathe, and fountain power. They have created a technology that will untether us, that will light our future from the ambient energy of the universe itself. It is the kind of leap forward that comes once in a generation. The anticipation in the room was electric. Liam took a half step forward, ready for his moment. It is my profound honor, Julian declared, her voice ringing with genuine excitement, to present the Visionary of the Year award to the founder and CEO of a company that will soon be a household name. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the brilliant mind behind Lyra Innovations, Dr. Elara Vance. The world stopped. For a single perfect suspended moment, there was absolute silence. And then my name and the Lyra Innovations logo filled the massive screen behind the stage. A polite, then thunderous wave of applause erupted through the ballroom, but I wasn't looking at the crowd. I was looking at Liam. The smirk on his face had frozen, then shattered, like a pane of glass hit by a stone. His skin, flushed with champagne and arrogance, turned a sickly, waxy white. His mouth hung slightly open, his eyes wide with a dawning, horrified comprehension that was more satisfying than any revenge I could have ever dreamed of. He looked from my face to the screen and back again, his mind frantically trying to connect the dots between the waitress he thought he was shaming and the CEO being celebrated on stage. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost, the ghost of the woman he had buried 5 years ago, now resurrected and standing before him not in ruins, but on a throne of her own making. Amelia stared at him, then at me, her perfectly made up face a mask of confusion and dawning suspicion. The people around them slowly began to back away, the social tide turning against him in real time. I gave him one last small smile, a final silent acknowledgement of the history between us. Then I turned my back on him and walked towards the stage, towards the light, leaving him frozen in the darkness he had created for me. A forgotten ghost in my triumphant story dot as I took the stage, the applause washing over me. I felt the last of the phantom ache disappear. I was no longer a ghost. I was no longer a victim. I was the architect of my own life, the curator of my own truth. And as I stepped into the spotlight to accept my award, I knew with every fiber of my being that this was not an ending. It was the beginning.